All right, get my right screen here. Perfect. All right. Welcome. This is Gatsby.js with GraphQL. I'm Matt Hooper. I'm a front-end developer at a company in Lodo called Ombud, and we're hiring. If you're interested, you can go to ombud.com/careers, and we'd love to work with you. Happy to slack that out later if anybody wants more info. So today I want to specifically talk about Gatsby.js and how it leverages GraphQL and why I think that's cool and important. And so I hope by the end of this, you'll have a base level understanding of how they work together and why it might be a good tool for your next project. So I'm particularly fond of GraphQL and Gatsby. They both have vibrant ecosystems, they move really fast, and they have one of the best developer experiences from any of the tools I use day to day. And this equates to enabling me or us as developers an easier and more enjoyable path to developing better websites and apps faster. So what is Gatsby.js? On the right-hand side here, you can see Gatsby's first homepage from 2017. It touts blazing fast static site generator for React. And if we flash forward to today, they really do a lot more than that. And in their tagline now, it's blazing fast websites and apps. So they've grown from just a static site generator into doing so much more. And this isn't a this isn't a Gatsby.js meetup. And there's certainly a lot of folks here that know a lot more about Gatsby than I do and are more qualified to talk about it. But we're just going to cover some real highlights so that we can understand how GraphQL is involved. And so for today, we are going to focus on just the static generation part of Gatsby. And really all that means is we need all of our information and data up front at build time. We're not truly going to have an interactive web app. And so Gatsby is a blazing fast modern site generator for React. The tooling that comes out of the box is fantastic. If we have time a little later, I'll show you a Lighthouse audit. It's really cool how much it takes care of under the hood. And maybe my favorite thing about it is the ability to have both static pages and hybrid pages. And what that means is static pages, we're just serving up pure HTML and CSS. A hybrid page, which is going to use a little of both, included some interactivity with JavaScript. And that's in contrast to what you might get in a single page app, say Create React app, where you have a single entry point like app.js. So different ways to serve the data. And again, we're going to focus today on just the static portion of that. Another piece about Gatsby.js that makes it what it is how big its ecosystem of plugins are. We heard Jason talk about a plugin that he's making for WordPress. We're going to use a plugin today that deals with the Instagram API. And it's just fantastic how large and how vibrant the community is. And then lastly, it's secure, fast, and has a great DX. So we're just serving static assets. So if somebody gets a hold of those, a lot less damage can be done. It's super fast. Again, we'll show a Lighthouse audit if we have some time. And I hope you see some of what makes the developer experience so great. Cool. So who uses Gatsby.js? Well, a lot of people are using Gatsby.js. Reactjs.org, their website, is a Gatsby website. And Spotify and Airbnb, while they aren't their core products, the design team and the engineering teams at the respective places use it. So it's certainly a great tool. And you can see more here at gatsbyjs.org/showcase, a lot of great examples of who's using Gatsby and why. And from a personal experience in my days as a freelancer, it was a really amazing tool to be able to compete with places like WordPress and Squarespace. It used to be a client would come and say, hey, I need a website from X business, and I need non-technical users to be able to update it with a CMS. And at that point, it pretty much was, hey, go check out Squarespace or WordPress. But today with Gatsby and some of their amazing integrations with Netlify, with Contentful, with WordPress, now you can have the best of both worlds. You can develop in React using really modern tech and still enable that non-technical user to update it. So really, really powerful. Okay, so how does GraphQL work inside of Gatsby? So I think the best advantage of Gatsby is their built-in data layer that combines all the data from the sources you configure. So on the right-hand side, you can see we've got databases, we have CMSs like WordPress, Contentful, we have CSV files, Google Drive, Markdown, APIs, whatever you like. At build time, Gatsby goes out, fetches all of this data, brings it in through GraphQL, and then makes it queryable with GraphQL. So super powerful to work with. You can share your data all inside of your app, and it's, again, converted into that GraphQL structure. And it's fast and easy to work with, especially when you bring in tools like Graphical. So where does GraphQL live inside a Gatsby app? So Gatsby all works on top of React. So for those that aren't familiar with React, I'm sorry. But we're going to have a couple files in here. The source API files, we have things like Gatsby config, Gatsby node, there's Gatsby browser. Those are going to allow us to interact with either our site's data, IO APIs, browser APIs, and more. So on the right-hand side here, we have Gatsby config.js. This is akin to a package.json file in the sense that this is where your site metadata lives. So we can say, hey, we've got a title, a description, an author, and then we're also going to register our plugins. And what that turns into is we get to our page queries, like in layout.js, we'd be able to issue a GraphQL query that looks for site, metadata, and title, and we'll be returning the data that is stored in our Gatsby config file. So the difference between the source APIs and the page and component queries are the page and component queries will allow you to pass in variables such as page names or variables in your data. And then they can also allow you to query your data closer to where it's going to be consumed, so you don't have to query all the data at the root of your tree. So that's cool, but let's build something. So today what we're going to build, and sadly the example here doesn't have any data yet, but we're going to build a Instagram clone of the NASA Instagram handle. And so I spoke a little bit about the ecosystem that Gatsby has for plugins, and the one we're going to use today is called Gatsby Source Instagram. And so here on the left-hand side on line 1, you can see what a sample query looks like inside of GraphQL. And this is also how it gets represented out inside of Gatsby. So you're going to have a top-level query. Beneath that on line 2, it's what we are querying. On line 3, it's all of the items, the connected items that are returned from that query. On line 4, we're going to have access to a single item, and then inside of that are the properties we would expect. So on the right-hand side, if we translate that to what that's going to look like in an Instagram query, our query is going to be called Insta Feed Data. We're going to get back all Insta nodes, and this is the provided by the Instagram plugin. We're going to have our edges, which are all Instagram posts, and then a node, which is a single Instagram post. And then beneath that, we'll have access to things you might expect on an Instagram post, like an ID, likes, comments, etc. So just for reference, this is what the NASA Instagram handle looks like today. And let's look at just a little bit of code here. So we had talked initially about the Gatsby config file. So in our folder structure here, it's a top-level file, Gatsby config.js. I'll bigify this a little bit for everybody. And then inside of here, we have a module.exports, and we're exporting our site metadata. And so at build time, Gatsby is going to collect all of this, convert it to GraphQL for us, and make it queryable. So if we go to, so when you spin up your Gatsby developer environment, you get localhost 8000. You also get a graphical server on localhost 8000 _GraphQL. And so if we look at what a GraphQL query against that data looks like, this is the same site metadata, title, description we have. You can see here that that data is being returned. And where that gets consumed, we have a layout.js file. This is a component that wraps all the components of our application. And we have a React use static query hook here, where we're simply issuing a GraphQL query. It's the same query we just saw in Graphical. That gets returned as data. And then inside, you can now drill into your data. So data, site, metadata, title. And when we go look at our server here, we can see that it's NASAgram. if I were to go back to Gatsby config and make this NASAgram exclamation point, we're all more excited about it now. You can see this is updated in real time. And also, if I go back to my graphical server and run that same query again, now I have NASAgram exclamation point here. So that's the real basics of how it gets dialed in. What we want to do now is go out and get our Instagram posts. So inside of our Gatsby config file, this is the place where you'd register all of your plugins. We've got a few plugins already in here. The one that we're going to focus on now is called Gatsby Source Instagram. And so we're registering that to the resolve key. And then the options that we're passing in are just the username. So we have a username of NASA. We have a component called pictures that has the layout wrapped around it. So we're going to get that title. We have an SEO component that's using React Helmet. And then we have the feed component, which is what we're probably more interested in, which again is just a React component. It's using the use static query and issuing a GraphQL query with significantly more information now. So let's go take a look at how this might look in graphical. So I've got this saved in my histories here. And if we look at it all Instagram node, here's the query we just saw. And for anyone who's used fragments in GraphQL, we've got this commented out for the time being. It doesn't play well in graphical. But now if we hit play, we can immediately see that we've pulled back all this data that we've asked for from Instagram. And so this particular plugin allows us to query data in a few ways from Instagram. The way we're doing it is we're scraping the last 12 public posts of a public handle. So NASA gives us access to that. And so in here, we can see that we've got all of our data coming back in a nice standardized format. So like we talked about in the short code example, we have our all Insta node. We have our edges, which are all the Instagram posts. We have a single node, which is a single Instagram post. And then again, all of the data that you might expect underneath that. So, and yeah, I got a little hover preview there. See if I can get it back. Kind of neat that you can actually see what the photos look like when they come back here. Get the thumbnail. Pretty cool. So back to our feed component, we're issuing the exact same query that we just saw in graphical. We've added in a image chart plugin from Gatsby. So Gatsby has a fantastic ecosystem around transforming photos to give you source sets, different sizes. Not the point of this talk today, but we're using that to gather some photo data. And then simply at the bottom of the component, we're just going in again to our data that's being returned from the API. So data, all Insta node edges. We're getting an array of photos, simply mapping over those photos and then distributing out the appropriate information to our card. And so if we go to NASAgram, you can see here that we've got all of our photos. And so really simple, easy to use. And again, the GraphQL part of it, that all of your data comes in all the same shape from all of your different sources is fantastic. And while this isn't particularly a Gatsby thing, it's a super cool GraphQL feature. So if we look at the NASA posts, we can see that there's a difference in the order they're coming in. So we get the sunset photo, we get the galaxy photo, we get the rocket photo. If we come back to ours, we're not in the same order. So inside of graphical, we can actually go to our Explorer over here. We can begin to filter and sort what gets returned. So if we wanted to sort things, we can sort in descending order, and we can sort on a field of timestamp. And now when we return this data, we should expect that the data will return in the order in which we want to retrieve it. We'll simply paste that over here into our component, wait for the refresh, and here we go. Now we've got sunset, galaxy, rocket, just as you see here, sunset, galaxy, rocket. So super easy to use. If you decided, hey, I don't like NASA anymore, I'm more interested in those Falcon 9 rockets that SpaceX is building, you can come over here, simply change the username in your Gatsby config file. We've made a change in our Gatsby config file, so need to run the develop command one more time. It's going to go out, get some data for us. Hopefully my internet is fast enough. And while we do that, we can take a look at the SpaceX Instagram handle. Seems to be a common theme, like there's a cool rocket launch going on tomorrow. Looks like it's built up. We can come over here and see that now our NASAgram is SpaceXgram. So super, super cool. Last thing I want to show, and have a few minutes for questions here. Just want to show a quick, I've got this site deployed, and super cool also with Gatsby. It's hooked up with webhooks going out to Netlify. So a push to master will build your code and deploy it automatically. And if we just run a quick lighthouse audit here of our web page, we'll see that it takes care of so much for you out of the box. It's hard to beat. And so from having built many websites from scratch, having to work with SEO or accessibility or performance or best practices, sometimes those things take time, constant maintenance. Gatsby seems to take care of quite a few of those right out of the box. Give it just one more moment here. Cool. So you can see here, I've done nothing but probably impact these negatively, but we've got great performance, great accessibility, 100 on SEO, 93 on best practices. And I think some of the slowdowns here are the way I'm handling photos. So really, really cool. That's all I got. Thanks for your time, everybody. Happy to answer any questions if there are some. Otherwise, I'll turn it back over.
I don't see any questions yet. If you have any questions, please post in the Q&A below, and we'll have Matt get to those. Sweet. No questions, Matt. Great job.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you. That was awesome. All right, so next up we got Victor. I'm going to butcher your last name, Aleravidez.
Yeah, that's pretty good, yeah.
All right. He's going to be telling us, he's all the way from Denver too. All right. Empowering marketing efforts with Jamstack.
Looks like we have a question.
Oh.
Okay.
We did get a question. Sorry.
Now I'll pass it back over.
Yeah. Hey, Matt, so we got a question. Did you encounter any challenges?
I think out of the ordinary, no. I mean, the challenges are around the Instagram API, like, hey, I want more access to more things. But no, overall, spinning up a Gatsby project, if you've never done it, just go to Code Sandbox or something. They've got a template built in. You can spin it up in no time. GraphQL comes out of the box, super easy, and would highly recommend just taking a stab at it if you haven't done it before.
Sweet.